Have you heard of Sri Lanka's first major plane crash? This plane crash killed 191 passengers. It all went down on December 4th, 1974. As Hajj grew closer on the Islamic calendar, millions of Muslims all over the world embarked on their pilgrimage to Mecca as they did every year. Airlines worldwide chartered flights to help pilgrims reach their destination. Martin Air was associated with the Royal Dutch Airlines, was operating a flight from Surabaya in Indonesia to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. So Martin Air's flight 138 departed Indonesia. As they made their way to Jeddah, this flight needed to refuel, and it was decided that flight 138 made its stop at Colombo's Katunayake Airport that night. Flight 138 approached Sri Lanka from the east. The pilot of this flight reached out to Colombo's air traffic control at 9:46 p.m. on December 4th to inform them of their stopover and to report they were 131 miles away from the airfield. The plane was supposed to reach the airfield at 10:10 p.m. that night. Air traffic control in Sri Lanka at the time did not have radar equipment that they could monitor or see the aircraft, and it was incorrectly reported that the aircraft was 6,000 feet and 14 miles away from the airfield. So the controller wasn't able to verify this fact due to not having radar equipment. The controller assumed this position was correct. The aircraft was clear for further descent, and the pilots were asked to report to the airfield in sight. Sadly, that was the last time they would hear from Flight 138. Eyewitnesses reported seeing the aircraft flying lower than normal. A sound of an explosion was heard in Muskelia a short while after. As the aircraft approached the airfield, due to a miscalculation of the distance and poor visibility, Flight 138 sadly crashed into the Seven Virgins Mountains in Muskelia, killing all 191 passengers on board. This air tragedy would go down in history as the worst of its time. The aircraft was said to be reduced to heaps of rubble. In the first few days following the crash, the Sri Lankan Army and rescue team struggled to reach the site of the crash, as the area was mostly thick jungle. It took several days to find the site of destruction. The team found no survivors. The fuel tank had ruptured and started a fire in the vicinity. The wreckage of the plane and its victims was scattered over 4 miles. The families of the victims of the plane crash visited this scene of devastation, hoping to find the remains of their loved ones. Sadly, not all remains were recovered, and many were said to be buried in Sri Lanka, with appropriate funeral rites being conducted. The most noted visit of a family member was the boyfriend of an air hostess, who was said to have visited in a helicopter to take her remains home. Thousands from around the island would visit Muskelia to witness the wreckage site of the crash. Residents of the area were said to have looted luggage, belongings of the passengers. Money was said to be stolen. My mother lived in Muskelia at the time. Whenever she and her family would visit town, they would see business owners and residents wearing expensive branded clothes, handbags and watches, all belongings of victims of the crash. At the time, Prime Minister Mrs. Sirimavo Bandaranayake had restricted imports, which made foreign brands easier to spot. It is said that the townspeople of Muskelia to this day have foreign currency as a souvenir. They also have pieces of wreckage from the aircraft, which is quite morbid. Few weeks after the crash was when rumors of ghosts and hauntings first began. The villagers would talk of lights being seen at the dead of the night from the site of the wreckage. There were talks of crying and screaming echoing through the hills near the site of the wreckage. These rumors were mostly talk of the town. The badges of the aircraft were fixed as a memorial near the place that the passengers were buried. There is also a memorial in Muskelia marking the site of the tragedy. The loss of 191 lives. Norton Bridge was said to be the closest town to the site of the crash. One of the tires of the aircraft is mounted on a pedestal at the entrance of the Norton Bridge police station. The memories of this tragic incident has faded away in time. Do you or your family remember anything from back in the day when this tragic incident took place? Do you have a memory you would like to share? Let me know in the comments.